In this video, I'm going to hit you with some raw numbers taken straight from third-party tracking services like Steam Charts, Destiny Tracker, Trials Report, and more. And these numbers, they're going to paint a pretty staggering picture. Now, let me preface this video by saying I do not think this is the end of Destiny 2, nothing so dramatic. And I want to make sure that the spirit of this video is not about bashing the game or the developer, but instead, the spirit of this video really is to spur on discussion and evaluation around what Destiny 2 is today, and if players are vibing with it. Okay, so this video was really inspired by the comments that I've received on recent videos in conjunction with my own personal feelings about the game, and in addition to a wave of comments from other influencers and streamers that I've seen who are very level-headed and logical people who love Destiny and are starting to feel burnt out and ready to take a leave of absence for varying degrees of time. Now, I'm right there with them. The game is holding my attention less and less, and when I miss out on a gaming session, it no longer feels so much like missing out. What's the cause of this? Is there any consensus to it? Is this a feeling that's widespread, or is it localized to a specific type of gamer in the Destiny community? All questions I'd like to spend some time exploring. But before we dive into that, let me take just 60 seconds to thank the sponsor of today's video. Today's video is sponsored by Outplayed. While most gameplay recording apps on PC require the navigation of clunky in-game overlays, there's a new option that's much less intrusive and a whole lot more convenient. Outplayed lets you customize your recording settings ahead of time and then hit the ground running. This program actively supports over 300 games, with more being added, and you get to dictate what gets recorded. You can tell Outplayed to save only the kills, only headshots if you're working on a sniping montage, and make sure you tell it to save your deaths too, just in case you die in some ridiculous way that you want to show your friends. And that's the other thing about Outplayed. You can trim and edit all of those clips quickly and easily in the app, and then share them on Discord with friends, or share them on YouTube with your subscribers, post them to Twitter, wherever your community is. So use the links in the description and pinned comment to download Outplayed today and get started. Let Outplayed sift through hours of your gameplay and find the moments worth keeping while you focus just on having fun. Alright, back to the video. Okay, first up, the numbers. Let's decide definitively whether or not Destiny 2 is hemorrhaging players. If we look at Steam Charts, which tracks player population totals, averages, and peaks on Steam alone, then we'll notice some things that jump out to us pretty quickly. Destiny 2 is currently in the number 17 spot for Steam Charts ranking. I mean, let's be clear, that's not bad. That's not bad at all, but it used to be better. In the last 30 days, the game has averaged 70,000 players and peaked at 124,000. If we zoom out and take a look at the game from a wider perspective, then we see that last October was, within the context of its own season, also a bad month. That being said, last October was still notably better than our current 30-day running. If we zoom out even further, you can see that 3 years ago in Destiny 2, it was very, very different. 3 years ago today, a month with a peak player count of 200,000 was actually a red month. That was a month with player loss. But today, a month with 150,000 peak players is a green month, a month with players gained. In addition to that, this October right now sort of looks like a stone skipping on the water. On Tuesdays, it bounces up, but then the skipping sort of trails off lower and lower and lower at the apex. And we're trending down, unfortunately. I mean, maybe Festival of the Lost will give us a nice kick in the pants and boost those numbers back up, but we'll have to wait and see. Now again, this is just on Steam. These numbers aren't 100% representative of the entire Destiny community, but they are certainly valuable for gathering data. Next, if we look at the PvP side of things, we see numbers that I think are even more alarming. This week of Trials is almost over. Not totally over, but close to it. We won't see a huge leap in these numbers this weekend by reset tomorrow morning, but they will bump up a smidge, as they usually do each week on a Tuesday, but most of the numbers are already in, and this current week of Trials logged 176,000 players total, with 35,000 players going flawless. Now let's zoom out a little bit. Last week we had 242,000 players total, 66,000 going flawless. And the week before that we had 297,000 total players with 71,000 going flawless. Now that trend down is pretty typical as you get through the season. But the first week of this season, always the week with the most players, logged 365,000 players with 105,000 going flawless. If we compare that to last season, we started with about the same amount of players, but last season we retained better player numbers to the end of the season. Last season ended with over 200,000 players playing Trials. Now, we will definitely fall below that number this week or next, and we're not yet to the end of the season. But let's zoom out a little bit more, get a broader picture. Let's compare this year of Destiny Trials to last year of Destiny Trials. Now keep in mind, last year, 2021, did not have a major DLC. Beyond Light launched in November of 2020, and the Witch Queen didn't launch until February of 2022. So all of 2021 was just seasonal content. And in that year, with no major DLC to boost the numbers, Trials had a peak weekend with over 750,000 players, 750,000 players, with 255,000 players going flawless that weekend. More players went flawless that weekend than total players are playing Trials today. And that wasn't just an anomaly either. In fact, Trials boasted a player count greater than 400,000 players every weekend for 8 weeks straight last year. To put that into perspective, this year's peak was just over 400,000 players compared to 2021's peak of 750,000. And this year, we have never once had back-to-back weeks with over 400,000 players, not once. So is Destiny slowly losing players? Let's be clear, Destiny still boasts a huge player count, with 777,000 players logging into PvE activities yesterday, and 712,000 engaging at least one PvP match yesterday. The Destiny community is still strong. It dwarfs literally most games out there. It is not dying, it is not in dire need of saving, and it is very, very far from being a dead game, regardless of how many dumb comments you see in comment sections saying that it is. But I do think players are finding the Destiny grind to be less appealing lately, and I think there are some factors worth considering so we can make sure that Destiny remains among the top games globally. First, I think the seasonal model is tiring out. I've noted this in a previous video, so I won't go too in depth on this one, but players are getting bored of the formulaic approach to Destiny seasonal content. It's predictable at this point. That's not to say that there isn't good content in there. The cutscenes and the narrative lately, they've all been really strong, and seasonal loot has had some absolute bangers. The seasonal themes and armor sets have been hot and people want them, but the slow drip-fed style of content and storytelling is getting boring. Every week you have to basically do the exact same things to get a minute of narrative. And people were getting so tired of doing it that Bungie auto-completed quest steps to get people to that content faster. But there's a reason why YouTube channels that do weekly story updates that just flat out show you the cutscenes and highlight the dialogue for you, there's a reason they're getting great views these days, because more and more people are deciding that the weekly repetitive grind isn't worth doing. They'll just go to a channel where they can see the cutscene without playing Catch Crash again, and that's understandable. The seasonal model, it works, it's not necessarily failing, but Bungie needs to bring more creativity to the way that they deliver that seasonal content, because right now, it feels like there's a template that's made, and every season is about making something to fit into each prescribed box on that template, and I'm ready to see a little more innovation personally. Second, I think the current PvP systems, they aren't working well. Bungie committed to bringing new and reprised maps every season, but so far, they haven't managed to make PvP more appealing in doing so. The very first map they made to break the multi-year new map drought was a map that they made specifically for a game mode that is rarely around, Rift. They heard all the complaints from the PvP community begging for new spaces to play Destiny 2 in, and they answered those complaints with a map specifically designed for Rift, which accounts for less than 8% of total PvP playtime. I will literally never understand that decision, and I even had people contest that claim lately where they said they never said it was for Rift, it just happened to come at the same time. That is factually incorrect. In fact, in the TWAB before Rift dropped, they specifically said, we made a map specifically for Rift and we can't wait to show it to you. It was Disjunction. Now, Disjunction plays amazingly well for Rift. Kudos, because they accomplished what they set out to do. But I think they set out to do the wrong thing, because this map does not play well in other standard game modes, and people were literally leaving matches the second they loaded into it, and Bungie had to punish quitting to get people to stay. So they failed to bring a new engaging map that players were excited about. They sunset maps that people liked, and they brought back D1 maps that people did not like. And when people started saying, okay, these huge maps, they're nice and all, but they're weighted too heavily, and we do kind of still really like Javelin 4, Endless Veil, these brawler maps. And then Bungie delivered Cathedral of Dusk. Now, Cathedral, it's a good map. I don't dislike Cathedral, but we just needed a great map for standard PvP, and there were so many options for beloved D1 maps that would get you little to no lashback. I like Cathedral, but I think it was the wrong season to drop it. Beyond that, the PvP loot is noticeably worse than it used to be. Out of Bounds is a banger SMG, I love it. But we lost the Messenger, Shayera's Wrath, Igneous Hammer, the Multi-Mach, pinnacle weapons like Redrix, Revoker, Recluse, Mountaintop, not forgotten. Regardless of how much trouble these weapons created, they were at the very least highly desirable and motivated players to go get them. In addition to loot being less desirable, PvP has continued to become a place that caters to the gamer that logs in occasionally and less to the player that logs in regularly. It's like giving better rates to customers who just walked in the door for the first time, and higher rates to customers who have loyally given you their business for almost a decade. The regulars had their movement nerfed, their execution of movement abilities was met with punishments to their weapon stats while performing them, their connections and lobby balancing got worse, and the competitive environment made for them got shoved into a closet and left to gather dust. The problem with investing too heavily in new players is that when the game is presented to them as a shallow experience, then they'll dip their toes in for a little while, they'll enjoy the casual dip, and then they'll move on to another casual and shallow experience, or they'll get hooked by something different that offers them real depth. Destiny has an incredible deep end with creative raids, with awesome looking armor and guns, dungeons that bring innovative new spaces and mechanics, and an exhilarating endgame PvP game mode with a shiny Egyptian chest presented to them by a Russian robot who loves pigeons and snorts when providing commentary, but the game seems hesitant to show those things to the new player, and I wish those activities were teased to the new gamer so they could get excited about the things in Destiny that excites us veterans. And I know that commentary sounds a little harsh, and I wanted to reiterate, this is not bashing D2 or the developer. What I want to do is find creative ways of making player retention easy so we can focus on growing the Destiny audience. I want to isolate the things in Destiny's past that were massive successes and ask the question, why did people love that? I also want to isolate the failures and ask the question, why did people dislike that? That careful analysis will help us realize what gamers love about Destiny and where we should focus our efforts moving forward. But what do you think? Are you playing Destiny less or more these days? What do you love about the game? What are you finding unfortunately punishing and pushing you further away from it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible.